Alright, so I'm gonna see how this
Oh,
plays out.
you. Don't be in a snit. Let's talk, you silly thing.
So I'm gonna try to see if I could grab at least 10 more of them, and hopefully today I could get at least 10 of them done today without my network going shitty. So this is Garuda. If you're ever interested in various different Warframes, this video and the last video and the last video before that are all about quick recaps of what each Warframe does, and when you pass your first initial Warframe in the game, what Warframe should you choose along the path. It's basically a fast rundown, brief, nothing more. No additional stuff, extra stuff, just standards of what they are and what they're best at. So this is Garuda. I'm up to Garuda next. This is our first ability, Dread Mirror. This is the second, Blood Altar. This is the third, Blood Letter. This is the fourth, Seeking Talents. So, Blood Mirror, it basically stabs a person, and during that stab period, the person is open for a melee attack, so you can finish them off then and there. So it's not just put up a shield in front of her like a mirror. It also allows through the blood of the enemy, which you're using from the blood of the enemy to create a mirror. You could thereafter do a melee attack on them to finish them off. So it's one, to create a shield in front of her, and two, to do a quick melee attack of that enemy, which gives you like probably like 2 seconds of invulnerability if you were getting shot at during the process. Second is Blood Altar. You just basically stab someone in the back, they fly up in the air, and the blood from that enemy is falling onto the ground, and eventually it flies towards you, slowly healing you over time. And if you have range with regards to this, it slowly heals your Warframe in time. So that's the second ability, range. This Warframe is all about range, and is always also about power. More power equals more range. More range gives amount of fast range in order to heal you and your fellow allies with Blood Altar. The third one is Blood Letter. Blood Letter offers substitution of one's own, sacrificing one's own health in order to get power strength and added towards status effect. So once health is destroyed, or a certain portion of your health is destroyed, you go straight into status effect type added towards your power strength. Um, Not so well, not so good. And third is Seeking Talents. You do a 360-degree attack from anyone in front of you, side of you, and behind you. With spikes going everywhere, talons flying in every direction. It's kind of like a build-up to ultimate attack. There's a duration period of 12 seconds stun rate on enemy, and you have a slash status chance of 100%. So it'll do 100% slash status chance. So they would get slash status effect. So after the slashes on them and they've been slashed by this effect, they're open up for bleeding damage. So good thing about it. So we'll test this in combat and we'll move on. For this video, I'll add some weapons just to make things a little easier on myself. Nothing special. I guess it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now I have it on Steel Path, and I'll keep it on Steel Path. And what we'll do now is we'll check out a mission, a location. And we'll do sabotage. Something real quick, more than level 100 enemies. And we'll use all four abilities and see how they work. You know, truth, the third ability isn't that great, so. But it all depends how you use it. It's acting up a little. Let's try it again. Sabotage.
That's it. Now get out of here.
Another thing about her first ability, it's a build-up. First ability, second, third, it's like a build-up towards her power. A little blood ball pops up above the screen, as you see here before. And the more you kill enemies, the more that little blood ball with the spikes in it keeps generating more damage fused inside of it. And eventually, over time, it becomes like a little Kamehameha thing. You can hold on it and you do a Hadouken with it. So that's the second and third. Now add status effect.
They fought well. Good dance, all.
The only time the third ability is somewhat good after you sacrifice health is if you have the second ability on. You have power strength on second ability. So as long as you're inside the bubble of the second ability, you don't have to worry too much about the third ability because you're sucking health from the enemies to substitute back to you. So the second and third kind of synergize in relations to each other. But if you were to subsume an ability, I would say the third should be the one you subsume. So we're now going to do a capture of Corpus, and I'm going to use the fourth ability.
Let's go.
Mission complete. The captive has been escorted to the extraction point. Well done.
Attack us and we will counter. That was a close one. Move and strike. We have to win this. For the Tenno.
was greater. This is good.
Mission complete. The captive has been escorted to the extraction point. Well done.
Attack us and we will counter. Let's go on the offensive.
Many things have been taken from us. It's true. But fortune favors the bold, and there ain't none so bold as people with nothing to lose.
That was Gauss. Suggestions, options, control. Switch out first ability. A. With a button that you could hold down. If you hold down that button,
Was greater. This is good.
he would keep running. Otherwise, if you just press the ability once, he'll just run forward and stop. You cannot use the center D-pad if you're using PlayStation, because it doesn't work. It has to be a button, like an up, down, left, or right button. Center D-pad for his power sucks, so you have to use something you could hold down. He's a crowd control. This is Jair. This is, I would say, the third least favorite Warframe in the game. So I'm not gonna do much with regards to her powers. I'm just gonna give it a rundown and show how they work. So in this case, her first ability is self-explanatory. To create a spare. Any kind of cast damage on anyone who's within that sphere. It's one of the better abilities that she has, and it hits multiple enemies all at once. It's not that great, to be honest with you. The second ability is the one that's, I would say you would want to replace. I replace her second ability with Ensnare. Her original second ability is... Oh, wait a minute. On configuration B, let's give her some strength. On configuration B, her original second ability is Coil Horizon. She throws forward a spear, and it explodes within a few seconds, manually triggered. So anything that takes a while to do isn't that great, because if an enemy is shooting you a lot and this thing takes a while to explode, you know, it's basically not to kill the person that's in front of you, kind of like to kill the person that's coming up behind them. So never really was a fan of that one. The third ability, I believe, is the best one. Burst of increased critical chance is pretty damn good, and each extended duration casting, you know, it extends duration over time in order for you to keep doing critical chance. So the third ability, I believe, is the best one. Second and third, and I believe the fourth ability might be average. It surrounds her and protects her in an electrical field, but at the same time it does critical hit towards enemies. But that all depends on the strength level of the enemies. If the enemies is very strong, then it won't really do critical hits. But it does do chain, which is kind of good. So in all truth, maybe 2 of her abilities out of 4 is good. So this is, I would say, a C level Warframe. So I won't get too much into her. I'll just show what she could do, and I'll be on my way to the next one. It really depends on what fun you could get out of her. Maybe you could get 3 abilities out of her. That's good. But for me, I believe in the fun ratio, I got about 2. Yeah, about 2 abilities out of her that really works effectively for what I'm looking for. Now this is a range warframe, so this ball affects things within range. The larger the range, the more it affects other things. But like every warframe, the more you increase the range, the less the power strength goes. So this is range, power strength, and duration. Range, power strength, and duration is required.
Use this. Oh, that's better. Medicines now, and repent later.
If you wish, you may return to the sanctum. But I think you have more fight in you than that.
Fine. I'll use these blasphemous medicines now, and repent later.
Tick-tock. Time and oxygen are running out.
How do you even use this? Oh, that's better.
You are out of options. Retreat to the sanctum.
Fine. I'll use these blasphemous medicines now, and repent later.
yourself.
As you can see, even with using all four of her abilities, I couldn't take down that necromech by myself, which means she's mostly about helping to as a support. She's not a DPS class. If you buff her for strength, she could do it on her own, but after a while, because she's not that powerful, she will become a problem. Um, so yeah, I would say she's about average at best. Moving on to the next Warframe. Alright, so this one is a bit more specific. So I feel it's necessary to state in when you're fighting certain enemies that have faster cooldowns or faster recovery time, it's not a good idea to have long duration period, um, especially when you need to do a power over again, because the effect of the fourth ability requires you to have less duration period depending on your damage. If you're killing enemies really quick, it's not really a good idea to have long duration. But if you're not killing enemies quick and you want to use the whole effect of the fourth ability, then long duration is good. For instance, when you're doing island hunt, it's not really a good idea to have your fourth ability here have long duration. But since that I would say since they've taken away the whole a lot with regards to duration cooldown um, from the past, but kept it some kind of the same. Touched it up a little, but kept it kind of the same. It's not as bad as it was before, but it's still kind of bad. Um, it's it's not bad with regards to you surviving, but it's kind of bad with regards to your fellow squad mates surviving, especially if they're damaging and killing things fast, and they want that immortality or that invincibility benefits on at all times, so they could use it at all times. It's best to have less than 21 retaliation duration period, because the protection period is 10 seconds. 10 seconds for what the duration I have on. So let's say I take this off, and let's say I go here. The protection period is now 7 seconds. But the cooldown, or should I say, the retaliation duration is 14 seconds. So even though you have less protection, you don't have to wait too long before you initiate your protection. Say we take it off completely, take off duration completely. There is no more duration. standards for its fourth ability would be 6 seconds for 12 seconds. You could lower that even more if you recommend the protection period to be less than 5 seconds. I would say if you want, you could put on transient fortitude, and that's it. Where you could get anywhere from 3 to 4 seconds, and that should be perfectly fine of protection, especially if the enemy does proc ability. But I wouldn't recommend this because, especially now that the game has been updated, if an enemy has a proc ability, first explosion, you might be able to survive it with 4 to 5 seconds, but second explosion, a follow-up from like say a nuke blast, will cause a secondary follow-up. So it's not recommended really to have less than 5 seconds. I believe the minimum protection period is fine at 100, but if you want about a good no more than say 8 seconds, you don't need 10 seconds. You want a good duration continuation for 8 to 10 seconds, but you don't need 10 seconds. You just want a little bit more too, because the proc period from the first to the second is about 3, maybe 2 to 3 seconds off. I would say 7 to about 8 seconds. So you would want, this might be too much. Yeah, it's too much. You might just want continuity on, and that's all. So 7 seconds should be fine with regards to this. 7 to 8 seconds. So that's all you really need. So you have to wait for a cooldown period of 15 seconds and then 7 seconds thereafter. So that's the one thing you have to remember with regards to Harrow. You should never make your retaliation duration last for too long, because the protection period lasts for a certain period. Even though it's good, it lasts longer. However, the time for it to cool down for you to use it again, to get the full effect, might not be kosher, especially it might not be kosher, especially if you're damaging your squad members, or damaging things fast and killing things fast or parts fast of an enemy. So you want something that you could always cast continuously. If you're in a long survival mission, that's a different story. But as long as you're killing things quickly or having good damage amount executed, then it's best to not have high duration on his fourth ability. His first is self-explanatory. It stops enemies. His second is self-explanatory. It sacrifices shields for fast reload speed. Doesn't really need it, to be honest with you. His third is very important, equally as important as his fourth ability and as his third. This is an A-class Warframe. I wouldn't consider this to be S-tier Warframe or S+ Warframe. I would consider this to be an A+ Warframe, because his headshot multiplier is 4x, and I don't believe it increases from 4x even if you do increase his power strength. So let's see. Yeah, so that's the bad thing about it. Your critical chance, or should I say your critical damage, will increase high and get higher, but your multiplier stays the same. So that's the bad part about that. So this is an A+ Warframe, and I'll use it in mission in order to show. If you could subsume an ability in order to buff, like if you could subsume his second ability in order to buff your fourth ability, or in order to buff your third ability, or to buff your first ability, for longer range, or for more power strength, or for more energy, then this goes more from an A plus Warframe. It becomes more of an S minus Warframe if you could subsume his weakest ability. Some might say it's not his weakest. Okay, so for this I'll just do a regular meso and proceed forward to the next Warframe. I'll say that again. I'll show the first, the second, the third, and the fourth abilities, and then proceed to the next Warframe. Never mind. Someone lost network connection, so I'm returning back to my ship. Hopefully this time I'm the host. If not, someone who has a stable network. So, okay, seems like I'm first.
Your weapons make music, and the enemy calls for a song.
My intel suggests there are rich enemy supply caches in the area, but I am unable to pinpoint their exact location. Search them out if you are willing to shoulder the added risk.
Move and strike. We have to win this. For the tenor.
You have collected enough reactant to open your relic.
Let's go.
Betrayers. My partners and I have been working on a new project. And I wanted you to be the first to see my amalgam.
found the first resource cache. I'm detecting 2 more faint hints. The enemy is broken. Well done. Now get to extraction.
Was greater. This is good.
Alright, that's Hildren. Self-explanatory. First ability is probably the weakest. You could subsume that if you ever wanted to. This is anywhere from a B plus Warframe to an A plus Warframe. I would say A minus actually. So if you want someone as a strong backup in order to replenish shields continuously, I would say no. I would say this is an A minus, B plus to an A minus Warframe. 3 abilities actually work pretty good. The second ability is probably the best abilities in my opinion to remove status effect. If it's not the second ability, then I would say replenishing one's shields is the best ability. Many people like to use the 4th ability, but it's simply to is simply to remove the enemy's energy and to let them drop energy over time. But it requires drain per second, which is 11.29 drain of her shields in order to do so. In order to get 11.29 energy drained from the enemy shields in order to get energy out of the enemy shields. So it takes about 70 and plus 11.29 additional in order to do so. The sole purpose of the fourth ability is to stun enemies, and you require you to have range, but it's also very helpful for pulling energy out of the enemy and to assist allies. I would say the best solution for this Warframe is to have lots of range. Power strength is not so much needed because her sole purpose is to pull shields from the enemy in order to give herself back shields. So you don't need power strength for that because it doesn't say you need power strength for it. Third ability, drains enemies shields. Of course, if you put power strength on it, and let's say we do that instead of range. Let's say here in this situation I'm going to use power strength. Put it here or maybe here. And let's just see how that works. So as you can see, if you use the fourth ability, nothing changes, even though you add power strength. So power strength really isn't a factor in this Warframe's kit. It's still 11.29 with 70 drain of shields. So if I take back off the power strength, which is here, it's now back down to 100, which is here, and you go back and you see it's still the same. So power strength is not required for this Warframe. Range and duration and shields are required for this Warframe. Mostly lots of shields and lots of range. So that's what you would do for this Warframe, because her sole survival is based on fast casting, or based on range, to acquire as much shields from her enemies so she could put shields back on herself. So she drains the shields from the enemies, and then she put it back on herself and on her fellow Warframes. So it says it right here. She's taking their shields, and then it'll put back on her and her fellow Warframe. So if you have a massive amount of enemy that's within a long range, you're sucking shields from enemy you can't even see on the battlefield, because it's not based on sight, it's based on range. They could be behind a wall, they could be on the second floor, it doesn't matter. As long as you have range, it's like an invisible bubble around her. So she will be pillaging shields from enemy. This Warframe is about range and duration and shields. I'll test this ability.
Each enemy is more powerful than before. Only with true mastery of the Tenno arsenal will you succeed.
My intel suggests there are rich enemy supply caches in the area, but I am unable to pinpoint their exact location. Search them out.
So what I just did there was use the second. The second finds every enemy that has a shield on the battlefield and pillages their shields. And the third ability links drain shields back on from the enemy onto the allies. So second ability is mostly for Hildren herself. Third ability is for Hildren and for the allies. So she's a support Warframe, but she's also a damage per second Warframe with the third ability. Actually, no, I'll take that back. She's not really a DPS. She's more like a buffer.
Finish your mission and we'll
So
take
she's a
look
buffer
inside.
frame. Another thing to be careful about the third ability, if you keep it on for too long and there's no enemy around, you're draining some of your own shields. So you could always turn it off. The third ability you could turn on and turn off at any time.
The enemy is broken. Well done. Now get to extraction.
For the tenor. Move and strike. We have to win this.
As you conquer the foe, so you conquer yourself.
Alright, so that was Hildren. She's a pretty awesome Warframe, and her fourth ability and her third ability are probably, no, her fourth ability and her second ability are probably the best ability. Because the second ability allows her to pillage enemy shields by the percentage, which then give her back shields from that. And if there's no one to use your third ability on, to help, so the third ability is not that great if there's not a lot of people around, unless you're using bots. So second and fourth ability are probably the best if you're soloing, but also a lot of people would say the third ability is better because if there are tons of enemy around, you need to make the whole drain from the enemy shields far faster. So it's a toss up between the second and third. All you need to know, this is anywhere from an B plus Warframe to I would say an A minus Warframe. The best ability is obviously the fourth, because by doing the fourth with long range you have to stun enemies, which allow your fellow allies to kill them quick, or stun enemies which your fellow allies would wait for energy to drop out of their bodies over time and pick up said energy and use that energy to use towards their powers if they're low on energy. That's the reason why the fourth is the best one. So that was Hildren. Hydroid is a Warframe that's kind of self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go too much into him. He's pretty much simple. It's easy to understand his abilities and to use them, so I'm not going to talk much about him. I'm just going to show it in combat. I would say, however, he would fall in the realm of B plus Warframe. They really buffed him from when he was in the past before to like C, so he's very much like a B plus Warframe. All his abilities, I would say every one of his abilities work, except for maybe the second ability, which is Title, but Title also works. Every Warframe's abilities work, but the ones that work less are the ones that you always look out for. So this is a B plus Warframe. What makes him a B plus and not a A plus is the fact that if you make your tentacles based on range go too far, radius, they tend to split apart and to seek out enemy at different sections, which is not good if the enemy is coming at you from one direction or from two directions. So it will seek out the first enemy that pop up each tentacles. So it's not good to have too long range. So the fourth wouldn't be considered the best ability, nor does the second. So he generally has two abilities that are his best: the Plunder ability and Tempest Barrage. And a lot of people say, well, that's not anything. It doesn't actually do anything by casting falling acid water on people. But the acid water could be considered his weakest ability. It actually, there's a Exumus mod to add stats effect to it. So in all truth, he really feels like he has more than two abilities that are weak. But reality is he only has two abilities that are weak. I would say Tempest Barrage and maybe Tidal Surge. To me, his third and his fourth are his best. If you could get off things properly with the third, then the third is pretty good because it throws enemies against the wall and removes status effect. But that's only if you have a syndicate mod on. Same for this one. It doesn't kill enemies if the enemies are strong. So he's really anywhere from a C plus Warframe to like a B plus Warframe. B plus only if you know how to use all his powers together. C plus if you don't know how to use them together, and he only has two. So he's a C plus Warframe in my opinion. They've cleaned up a lot of things with regards to him, but especially with range. But he still feels the same to me. So he's still in the C plus to B minus range. I'll use his ability, and if this is a type of Warframe you like where you can use all his abilities, then I would say go for it. There's nothing wrong with picking a specific type of Warframe, but I'm just informing anyone who plays this game exactly which are the stronger ones, which are the weaker ones, and what are their abilities, so on and so forth. If you're trying to survive for long survival runs, or if you're trying to beat a boss quick, or if you're trying to not be boss but you're trying to defend and support people, which ones are more in the realm of DPS, support, or crowd control. This is more a crowd control support, but he's not the best crowd control support. He does have unique abilities, but some of them might fall short, so might not be the one you would want. But his playstyle is more fun than most, so a lot of people still play him simply because of his playstyle. Like, his playstyle is more fun to me than Hildren or Jair's playstyle, or Ash's playstyle, even though they are better frames to me than he is.
Master quests, Tenno. Look up your tongue. Fine. Release the amalgams.
Attack us and we will counter.
You have broken their ranks and they are on the run. Another successful mission. Find extraction.
Move and strike. We have to win this.
The weird part about him is that the third ability used to be his worst until they fixed it. So it's like it's not the worst anymore. It's like either the second to worst or the third to worst. So he still has his third and his fourth are now his best ones. So I would say this is like a C plus Warframe.
As you conquer the foe, so you conquer yourself.
The only one I didn't do is the fourth ability, is tentacles, but it should be self-explanatory. I just said what will happen. If you increase the range, the tentacles are going to separate themselves apart, and it makes it very difficult to crowd control people who can walk past the tentacles. So I don't really need to show that. It's just not a good idea to make his range too far. I'd be say 145 is about the most you should make his range for the Hydroid Warframe. No more than 145. So far I've done, let's see, Garuda, Gauss, Gyre, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 Inaros. So this is the 7th one. This is his abilities first. Also a Warframe that's self-explanatory. And a Warframe that could go anywhere from a B to an A plus Warframe. I wouldn't consider him a S tier Warframe unless you're building for power strength. If you're building for power strength with regards to this Warframe and health and armor, this is an S level Warframe. So if you have power strength, health, and armor, this is an S level Warframe. Anywhere from an A plus to an S level Warframe. Why? Is because this Warframe has no shields. This Warframe only have armor and health. And his health is at a ridiculously high rate for base level. I would say, let's say, I'm going to remove everything on him. At base level, his health is 2,000. So at base level, he's already 2,000 health more than anyone. So he has the highest health in the game without any mods on. So his whole thing is armor and health and strength. So if you have anything with shields, it's advised that you remove that. And range. So health, armor, range, and strength. I would say duration is not really that much of a factor. It's just a lot of health. A lot of health, a lot of armor, a lot of strength. You know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to say it. Alright, so I'll leave it the way it is. The whole purpose of this video is not to make him strong. The whole purpose of the video is to say exactly what it is. So I'll keep this one. I'll use this one. No, I'll use this one. So this is what I have for this one. Range. Lots of range. 2 something. The longer the range is, the more you could siphon armor off of an enemy and put it back onto him in order to give him back his armor as well as health. So these are his abilities. Explanatory. Kind of blind. It blinds kind of blind enemy. 25% lifesteal. Second ability. Kind of like a spinning tornado of death. I would say this is his weakest ability. If you want to subsume something, I would say subsume this and switch it out for a different power from another Warframe. So the first, the third, and the fourth are his best abilities. So Scarab Shields, Scarab Shell. That's the ability that strips the armor from enemies and put it back onto him. And of course the fourth abilities. Once you do this, from the fourth, all the swarms go towards the enemy and they go back onto the Warframe from there. So I'll do it with regards to what his powers is in combat to show how that works. The second, or should I say the third and the fourth ability kind of synergize with each other. Less on the first ability, which kind of gives you kind of immortality. But the second and the third does it. So this is very important. The third is very important, and the fourth is very important. So once this is cast on the enemy, you cast this first, the fourth, you then return to your third. You should always do this one first, and then do this one thereafter in order to put armor back on you, because that's how it works. So I'll use it. Oh, almost forgot. He doesn't have efficiency, so a lot of energy is needed, so I need to put something in order to lower that. I am going to have to switch out this with this. There. Alright. Oh, wait a minute. And range for here. That should work. Power strength is not really required for this Warframe, except when you're in going beyond, I would say, level 150. This power strength of 40 is all because this Warframe is very important to say it, because this Warframe is based on range and removing armor from enemy, and range is part of the factor of that, and the fourth and the third ability are part of that. It's less on needing power strength to do so. It's more on needing a lot of enemies to do so. The enemies are doing all the heavy lifting. See, the swarms goes towards armor. 140s pulled from enemy armor, and the more enemy armor you have, the more armor will go back to you. Or should I say, the more enemies that are around you, the more armor is going to go back to you. And the less armor they have, so when you start shooting them with a gun or hitting them with a sword, they'll die quicker because they don't have any armor, or they have a small amount of armor left, so you could die.
Each enemy is more powerful than before. Only with true mastery of the Tenno arsenal will you succeed.
My intel suggests there are rich enemy supply caches in the area, but I am unable to pinpoint their exact location. Search them out if you are willing to shoulder the added risk.
One very important thing to remember is if you hold, I believe if you hold on the A ability, it could then suction cup an enemy into the ground or suction their health off of the enemy during the process. Or am I mistaken? No, it's definitely the first ability. Or maybe they... Yeah, it's the first. Alright, so I'll have to switch out his A ability in options to my sprint. Why I'm doing this is because he has a unique first ability. It allows him to be invincible during his whole sucking the life out of his enemies whole thing. So during this process, if you took a lot of damage and you decide to find an enemy real quick to use them as a to suck the life out of them or to convert them, you cannot be killed during this process. So it's a nice little thing, that waiting game. The enemies could be surrounding you, but they can't really kill you during this waiting game period.
The relic has been cracked open. Finish your mission to find out what's inside.
I'm going to see if I could find someone, but if
the enemy is broken, well
these
done.
Warframes, they're... Okay, here. Where is he? Okay, he was too weak. Alright. I wish he wasn't that weak, otherwise. Because what the first ability does is blinds them. And if I hold down the button and I do a melee attack, I could start to suck out their life. But if they're too weak, they die automatically from a melee attack. Or a melee finisher.
grows greater. This is good.
I'll try it again, and this time on survival. Because it's survival, there are more enemies. And less likely for fellow Warframes to kill everything within the vicinity. Oh, wait a minute. I wonder if they got rid of it. They might have gotten rid of it.
Let's go on the offensive.
Oh, crap, he's shooting. They might have actually gotten rid of it.
The relic has been cracked open. Finish your mission to find out what's inside.
Oh, hold on. Shit.
You have broken their ranks and they are on the run. Another successful mission. Find extraction.
Any last requests, Tano? Huh? Work out your tongue. Fine. Release the amalgams.
Plasma, cartilage proliferators, silicone double duds. Ugh. Sealing wounds.
I think they might have gotten rid of it. What the hell? Okay, I'll have to go into a simulation for this. Maybe because it was so OP that they got rid of it. That sucks. That's probably what it was. It was probably still so OP that we're like, okay, people are abusing this. See, I was curious. I was curious maybe if they took it and turned it into Syndicate mod. That can't be right. Alright, so I'll go into Simulacrum because this is it. This is it. It does this. Success. Okay. I mean, I'm looking at desiccation, and desiccation curse is 100%. It says nothing about holding anything down. You just use the desiccation. You blind them. And you steal health. But it says nothing about turning enemies into... Let me go to fourth. Yeah, they changed it. Christ, they changed it. You can now summon Kavats now. So before you had to turn enemies into like companions to attack you. Now the whole thing is he summons a Kavat. Here it is. Blast enemies with wave of cursed sand and blind them and steal their health. And then it goes right here. Becomes a sandstorm, spins around the whirlwind. And then it goes right here. Scarab Shield does what Scarab Shield does. So on and so forth. And it took the first ability's suction cup of enemies to take their life and then convert them into an ally. And they made the fourth ability. They've turned the fourth ability into the summon thing by casting the fourth. And you don't have to hold down on it anymore. So that's okay. So I don't have to do this within a simulacrum. It's self-explanatory. So that was Inaros. I'll use it in combat. So I knew something was off, and now I don't have to hold anything down. And now I could return it back to my regular default that I had it before. Something did fell off, and I was right. They changed it. They changed it either during the last update or the update before that, because it's been a while since I've actually played in Naros, so I wouldn't be able to tell when they changed in Naros, because it's been probably an entire year since I've played in Naros, and they've changed it within the year. Now you summon a sand cavet instead of turning someone into a sand enemy ally, which is very good, because the whole taking long to turn someone into an ally kind of took time, even though it did offer invulnerability. But it did offer something, I don't know how I feel about it, because the whole point of the first ability, Suction Cup, was to, why people love it so much is that you could be invincible during that period. So if you were on your last 10% of health, it'd just be a waiting game, and they wouldn't be able to kill you. So I'm not sure that I like that they nerfed Inaros. So he used to be S tier to me, but because I realized they've now nerfed him, he's now A+. Yeah, A+. I don't consider this S tier. I consider this a bad decision. But he was probably so OP that they decided, you know what, we better do something, because people are just cheesing using that ability. That's the blind sand one. Blind sand. Go for melee finisher with the blind sand, blind him, then finisher. Second ability turns into a tornado. A completely useless ability in my opinion, because all it does is spin them around and doesn't really kill them. It crowd controls them, which is good for your allies if they're taking a lot of damage, but it doesn't really kill the enemies. So if you want to subsume something, subsume the second ability. I highly recommend that. So first, third, fourth are fine. Second, not so much.
The relic has been cracked open.
Once an S
Finish
tier
the mission to
Warframe is
find out
more
what's
like an
inside.
A plus Warframe now. And of course, this is the fourth ability here. He does that. And it sends little cabots after the enemy. So I'll do it again. And they'll go chasing. There it is. He's chasing after it. My sand cabots. You can put duration on that as well. And they'll attack him. But we already have a Warframe that could summon a cabot, and that's Korra. So, and hers is stronger than his. So, see them there? They're good backup. 2 of them. No, 3. No, 4. Yeah, pretty good. But I still prefer my whole desiccate thing, where I'm invincible. So, A plus Warframe. Very good Warframe.
The enemy is broken. Well done. Now get to extraction.
This is third ability here. I'm going to be sucking their armor. So blind them first. Suck armor thereafter. So everything is a little change from how they used to be before. You used to do the third and the fourth. Now it's just the first and the third. In my opinion, they screwed it up, but as an overall experience for people to understand how to use the frame better, I think this is a better experience for beginners. The Inaros. The past Inaros might have been a little bit more complicated to learn how to use. This one is more easy and simple to use. So we're on to the next Warframe. The next I Warframe, which should be Ivara. And they did not nerf her. I think she's still the same. And she is an S-tier Warframe. She's a squishy frame, but you don't go to Ivara for brawling. You go to Ivara for stealth work and for DPS using her third ability, I believe. So many people say she's not a DPS Warframe. She has an ability that's like a DPS. Navigator. Navigator is her second ability, because what Navigator does, it's you press the second ability, it finds the spot on the enemy's body, and then it follows up with what you're navigating your weapon to do damage towards. And it says it right there. The damage multiplier is 7.75. So this scales with regards to your power strength. So it's very helpful ability, especially if you are trying to knock parts off of an enemy or destroy things much quicker without even being close to them, especially if they're far away. You could kill things from far away without even going close to them. So at right now my power strength is 155. This is the strength of Navigator. Growth of 1.43 at a 7.75. If I decide to, let's say, take off continuity, or let's say for the sake of this video, take off this and let's see, what am I going to do here? Yeah, okay. I'm going to put on more power strength. Let's say right here, and put this here. I now have more power strength. Obviously, this is smaller, but I now have more power strength. So when you go back and look at Navigator, it's now 10.5 with a 2.7 growth. So before you had like 11 damage, 11.5, no, before it was 7.5 damage. You now add more power strength, so now the growth of your multiplier is by 2.74 added towards the damage that's going to be done to the enemy. So you do 10.5 damage, and it will multiply that by 2.74. So think about that when you're doing damage to an enemy. So damage multiplier is 10.5, but the growth with regards to the damage goes up by 2.74 more added towards that. So it's 10.5 times 2.74. So very powerful second ability. First ability also very powerful. This is an S level Warframe. I've said this before. First ability is very important. There are three purposes for a first ability. No, four purposes for the first ability. One is to put the enemy to sleep. You do that with duration. Two is to make a lot of noise. You do that also with duration. Three is to make a bubble. You do that also with duration. And I guess, no, it's more like three. I'm saying four, but it's more like three. I keep forgetting that sleep is just one. It has four though. So bubble radius. Yeah, it has four. Oh, yes. And the fourth one is a string. A long string that you could run on top of. So there's three. There's bubble, there's noise, there's sleep, and then there's a string that you could run on top of to stay out of harm's way. This you would have to use a button in order to hold down and then cast. Or maybe they got rid of that as well. Yeah, they look like they got rid of the hold down. So you might be able to... No. Yeah. You would have to pick a button. I wouldn't represent the D-pad, the center D-pad. Pick a button for this first ability. Example, I'm going to now switch the A ability for... It's very important to understand this, so it could be less of a pain in the ass for you if you decide to go with this Warframe. Use the A ability. By using the A ability for this button, you could just press up as many times as you want. And what that does is allow you, because this is a complicated Warframe, that's why it's S tier, it allows you to shift through all four, the various types of this ability. So press up till you get to the one you want, and you hold down on that up button in order to either put an enemy to sleep or to cast a bubble on your fellow allies so they could stay invisible in this specific location, or to make a range that you could walk on or run over, or to make noise. So it has two effects. One for pressing up to go through each of them, the other to hold down so you could cast the ability. Very important first ability, very important second ability, and very extremely important third ability. This is an S plus level Warframe, not just S plus. Even though this is a squishy Warframe, as long as this Warframe can be invisible, it could survive most bosses. In fact, almost all bosses, if they cannot find her, if she puts silence on her prowl ability. So, what this does is this works with duration. If you go into the Warframe and you put duration of 175, not duration, it works on efficiency, not duration. My mistake. If you put efficiency of 175 on this Warframe, which I have, you then go on to the power, and it says it right here. It will tell you how much drain per second is happening. So you get less than 1 second of drain energy from this Warframe, and that's the best you can do. Less than 1 energy. The moment you take Streamline off or Fleeting Expertise off, it would go up by more than 1 or by more than 2. This is very important because you don't need duration for this third ability. You just cast this on, and slowly but surely your energy is going to be drained while you're invisible. And as long as you have 175 on, it would take a long time for all your energy to go off. And you could walk around in this ability. As long as you are not running, you could walk around forever using this ability, just walking around killing enemies, shooting them in the head, blasting them in the back, stabbing them with your knife, as long as you're not running. Because in this mode you have to walk, you have to prowl. That's why it's called prowl. But as long as you have 175, you will always be solid and you will never die. The only time you might die is if someone throws a grenade onto the ground and it does AoE damage. In those cases, you just roll out the way and get out the way of its range. Boom, Bob's your uncle. You're safe. Unfortunately, you cannot get rid of the fourth ability. I would say the fourth ability is the weakest. But if you build it for strength, like I just did, this Warframe, your multi-shot stays the same, but your damage increase. You cannot change this fourth ability, and it's the weakest out of all three abilities. But if you run out of ammo in your weapons and you have 175 efficiency, this is your weapon, your arrow, because your weapon, whatever weapon you have, turns into a bow. So you could keep firing and they'll die. And it's multi-shot, so no problem there. So it's her weakest ability. That's why I say this Warframe is anywhere from an S to a S plus there. I forgot that her fort is the weakest, so I would have to dock it down from the S plus now just to the S. Because this is shitty. But it's not shitty as in completely bad. It's shitty as in it doesn't help. So she has now gone from S plus to about an S. So this is an S Warframe. Some would say anywhere from A plus to about S. But I say it's an S because her third ability is godsend and her first ability is very good. You fight a juggernaut, you need to put it to sleep. It won't go to sleep. You put her ability on it, it goes to sleep. You need to protect your fellow allies. Great. You need to do multiple damage with quiver ability of the second. With damage multiplier 10.5, which is one of the highest in the game. Great. So he have two superior abilities, very good abilities that could one-shot most enemies, and one very good first ability. So that makes her an S tier Warframe. Anywhere from A plus to S tier. Anyone says otherwise, they say, oh, no, this is below an A plus Warframe or S tier Warframe. That person might not understand Warframe whatsoever at all. We're going to do this in combat. I talk a lot on, about her because she is S level. S level Warframes typically get more love than other Warframes. So someone else is hosting, that's why it's taking me a while to get into mission. So whoever is hosting, we're on their network. That's why I'm not in mission yet. Otherwise, well, I would already be there. My network is bad, but I think this person's network might be worse than mine.
They have just shut down all systems. I'm sending life support capsules your way. That's it. You opened the relic. Finish your mission and we'll take a look inside.
Sleeping also allows for you to do finishers.
Extraction is available if you need it.
Beautiful Warframe. Only weakness is that she's not meant for DPS combat, so she's not a brawler. And that's it for our VAR. I'm going to go on to the next Warframe, and hopefully I could do a good 10 today and proceed forward. If my network doesn't go down with the next Warframe, I'll probably do the other one after that and call it a day. It should be the 7th or the 8th Warframe now. I started with Garuda, and I proceed forward by Naros and then to her. Garuda, Gauss, Hydroid, Hildren, Inaros, Ivara. Yeah, so this should be the 7th Warframe. I got about 3 more to go. If my network plays nice, I should be able to
And so we learn
do those 3 Warframes.
clarity and purpose.
So I got a little distracted there because I wanted to set her up for duration later on. So on to the next Warframe. So that was Ivara. This is Jade, the recent Warframe that just came out. So I'm going to stop at Lavos if things go well. I'm not going to talk too much about Lavos, but I might talk a bit about Korra. So Jade is fairly new, so I don't know too much about Jade, other than she's a support Warframe, and this is Jade's ability. She's kind of self-explanatory. She's there to help to heal people and to buff them in many ways than other than healing, by giving them damage multipliers or a status effect onto enemies. So she's support in more ways than one. Her first ability is more on healing the enemies and doing damage at the same time by throwing a ball towards the enemies. And any enemies with this light judgment on top of their head means that health is being slowly drained from them, but at the same time within the vicinity of the health being drained, that area for which they're in is also a healing spot. So they're being drained at the same time, but at the same time, you, as soon as you run within that little vicinity or within that bubble, you start to get health back returned from the enemy to yourself. Second ability is also a bit more complicated than the first ability. You have to cycle through various different abilities, and I would say the same thing that you did for Ivara. You would take her second ability, and what you will do, you would switch off and go into your configurations, and you would take options and put her second ability here. That's her B ability, which is her second, and put it here onto your up button so that you can switch off within each of them as fast as you can in order to get the effect that you want. And remember, the B ability, the location would not be the sprint. So that's the great part about that. You could always use the up button in order to switch to things fast and to get them, execute them effectively by holding down on them. So you always know how things work. So that's this. First one is power of 7 to give you ability strength. Second one is damage increase. Third one is shield and shield recovery. So it really depends on who you're fighting. If it's Corpus, the third one might come in better. If it's Grineer, the second one might be more important because you have to increase your damage or your weapons to get through their armor. If you're fighting regular enemies, whether it's Corpus or Grineer, whoever, it might be important to cast the first and then switch off to the second and cast the second. So the second feels more like towards Grineer and Infested, and the third feels more like towards Corpus. So that's the beautiful part about Jade's second abilities. Like Avara, if you switch off, you could switch between any of them any way you want. Third ability is you summon different gaze in order to slow enemies. They surround you, and it's based on duration and range. So this is a support Warframe that requires strength, duration, and range. Mostly range and mostly strength. Not so much duration. Why? Because if an enemy does a lot of damage towards you, you want to have a lot of health return within a few seconds from where you threw your ball at with your light judgment to where you're casting your third ability in order to do damage, to do less defense or defense reduction per second, and to slow enemies. So it's all about range, and it's all about strength. The stronger the strength, the stronger the defense. So range and strength is the more imperative one, and of course duration comes in third. So yeah, and then the fourth is exactly what it says: glory on high. So use alternative fire to detonate judgments, causing an explosion of Jade's light. Enemies inside the light judgment radius empower the explosion. Okay, so if they're within radius of light's judgment, the moment she used Light's Judgment on them, throws it on the ground. Whoever is within the radius as she threw it on the ground after she goes into her flying mode. Because this makes her fly. This fourth ability, you cast fourth ability, she all of a sudden start flying. Then she used the ability of the fourth ability, your R2 in this case. You would think, okay, so I have to cast the fourth ability twice. No, all you'd have to do is cast the fourth ability once, and if you're using a controller, you press the R2 button to use said ability, which is to throw it to the ground. If you press the fourth ability again, she goes back into her normal form and she stops flying. So it's very important to understand that. So this is all about range and multiplier. As you could see, in power, range multiplier is 1.5. Not very good. Damage reduction 50%. Not very good. Strength and range is required for this frame. So at the moment I'm at rank 13. So even though my strength is pretty good, because my rank is 13, it's off because it's not maxed out Jade. So that's not the purpose of today's video. The purpose of today's video is to tell what all her abilities are and to use them in said combat and see if this is what you want. If you want a support frame that buffs the allies and also do damage per second on enemies, I would go for this. This is a defense warframe to defend herself and to defend others, as well as do damage to the enemy over time. So she's not simply a DPS warframe or simply a tank warframe. She's a support of both tank and DPS. That's one of the reasons I kind of like support warframes. They're like an amalgamation, an amalgamation of both a DPS and a tank. They cannot soak up energy and damage like a tank, and they cannot cut up the enemy or shoot the enemy fast and kill them fast like a DPS, but they fall right in the middle where they could do a little bit of both. So I'm gonna run. I'm gonna cast an ability that does damage on the enemy, which is my first ability, A. Oh no, that's the second. I forgot that I switch out my second ability with the up button. Okay, that's second. So now I have to do it first. Because the second ability is switch off, switcheroo. There are 3 different powers for the second ability.
That's it. You opened the relic.
That's the first.
Finish your mission and we'll take a look
It's a
inside.
healing ball for your allies. It's also a death ball for your enemies. So the moment they run in there, they start taking damage. And you could tell they're taking damage because there's like this little angel light on top of their head. See, the angel light represents they're taking damage, and you're getting healed during the process of them taking damage. Those little light balls around you represents them taking damage, and you getting healed in the process. That's what those light balls around you represent. You're being healed. So I should have been dead long time ago to heal myself. That's the reason why this Warframe is so beautiful. Now I'm dead. It's beautiful in that way because you could keep doing it over and over. So you could keep healing yourself. So she's kind of like Trinity. Because if Trinity keep sucking health out of enemies and giving energy back to people, she kind of does the same thing. But Trinity's health recovery is her fourth ability, where hers is her first. But Trinity's fourth is far superior because she does a complete heal of your entire health, not just temporary heals. So I would say Jade will fall in line of what I would call an A+ Warframe, not really S tier. So she got some ways to go. Okay, that was her first. This is her second, the ones I'm switching off from. I'm now going to press it. It makes that sound. The effect is now on the enemy. It tells you exactly what it is once it's on them. I'm going to switch off again to the next ability. Cast the next one on her. The next one has been cast on the enemy. So the effect of the second one is now on the enemy. Use the third. The third one is now on the enemy. And the first, the second, and the third are very different. First one is power strength towards me and my allies. Second one is doing more damage towards enemies. Third one is stripping shields. So it shows you based on color what the type of ability is. So if you're confused with regards to what her second ability is, it would tell you the name of it in the color of the color you're using. So it's green, but it will tell you what is being active right now. So if I do it again, it tells you exactly what it's doing. And it has a symbol to represent it as well. So in case there's even more confusion. There's like 3 slashes in the center. So it will tell you what they are. Switch it off again. It's a different symbol now. Switch it off again. It's a different blue, green, red. So it tells you if you even if you can't see the text, it tells you in color what it is. So once you do it, that represents shields. The blue represents shields. The green represents removing one's armor or doing more damage. And of course, this is power strength. None of these abilities are to stun enemies. They're all meant towards adding buffs towards your allies and yourself for doing damage to the type of enemy you will be fighting. I have power strength and my power strength is on. I should switch to puncture damage. I could be saying the wrong thing, but because I can't see the text because my screen is kind of small. But you get the gist. Very powerful Warframe. Unfortunately, she only falls under the A category. So that was the third, the second, and the first ability. I didn't use the fourth, but I'm going to use it real quick to throw it towards the ground. But I really don't need to use the fourth. The fourth is self-explanatory in the explanation. I don't need to show that. That's simply throwing a bomb towards the ground and wait for it to explode, killing anyone within the vicinity. That's all the fourth is. You turning into like a flying Superman, flying out the way so they can't kill you, and throwing a bomb to the ground. That's what the fourth is. So I don't need to show that. Moving on to the next Warframe. I would say it's the weakest power that she has. Out of the out of the 4, it's probably the weakest or 4th, so I don't really need to show it. The only good thing about the 4th is you could start flying and fly out the way if the enemies are on the ground. Next Warframe is Korra. I'm gonna stop at Lavos. This is Korra Warframe. This is Korra's ability: Whiplash, Ensnare, Venari, and Strangledome. Now for Venari, I believe you would have to, just like the previous 2 Warframes, you might have to put the third ability in your options to be bring Venari out. So for this one, the C ability has to be one you would press and hold down in order to execute it. Because each Warframe is very different, so you have to press the hold down button differently. So first ability, and Whiplash. does exactly what it says. Exactly what it says. The sole purpose is to send enemies reeling into uh, defending whiplashes. That's all. Boost equipment, melee, weapon mods. So that's all it does. Sole purpose is to lash an enemy away or pull an enemy towards your strangle dome when you cast your strangle dome. So it's either to lash them away, to get them away from you, or to pull them towards the strangle dome. It's a very brutal Warframe if you think about it. You create a strangle dome and then you pull enemies towards it so they could get impaled and crucified. Ugh. Very brutal. I keep telling people Warframe is like a horror movie, but you know, because there's so much action in it, it doesn't feel like it's a horror movie. But if you think about it from point of view of the enemy, they're being, I wouldn't want to be them. Yeah. So second to be ensnare. Basically a bunch of spiky whips goes around an enemy and ensnare them, and it looks like it puts them to sleep, but it really doesn't put them to sleep. They're just trapped in like this void cylinder that they can't move and get out of. Most powerful ability I think is the ensnare ability, if not the strangle dome. So she has two very powerful ones, ensnare and strangle dome, and I believe her Venari is the third, and her whiplash is very important to help in assisting the strangle dome to do more increased damage towards the strangle dome. Because when she's whipping the strangle dome, or she pulling an enemy towards the strangle dome, she's strengthening the strangle dome. And the purpose of the strangle dome is to do exactly what it says here. Everyone is hanging from it like they've been impaled. And if she keeps hitting the strangle dome with her whip, you know, in some type of sadistic way, you know, she hits the wires on the whip, it's basically doing more damage towards those enemies over time. So you could keep hitting it, and it will keep taking damage over time. And the stronger she keeps, the more she keeps hitting it, the more it keeps pulling more enemies towards the dome. So it's kind of a psychotic frame if you think about it. But most of the frames in Warframe have a little bit of psychopathy, or is that a proper word to use? No, psychopathy towards them. Yeah, psychopathy is a totally different thing. All right, so I'll show you all this in combat. Yeah, whoever thought about creating warframes and whoever thought about it are called the Entradi, or you know, not really Entradi, more like Orokin. Yeah, they're the ones that thought of Warframe, thought it all up. They were a bunch of megamaniacal, psychotic, not even human anymore, freaks of nature. Kind of like the people, the Romans, the emperors of Rome way back in the ancient times, you know. Once their glory days were long past, they all became like psychopaths afterwards, you know. Keep having children after children that was one worse than the next. Yeah. Heard they're making a Gladiator 2 movie. I know it's gonna suck. You don't even have to tell me. I should have left that movie alone. Gladiator 1 was fine just the way it is. They didn't need a Gladiator 2. Like, what the hell's wrong with people? They did not need a Gladiator 2. Alright, so.
The reactor is going into stasis. Now is your chance to complete this
First
sabotage.
ability.
Use whatever you can to make sure
Find
it
an
never
enemy.
works again.
Let's find an enemy.
Coolant
Yes,
cells-
you're here, Venari, but I need to use you for specific. Here's the beautiful part about Venari. She might be here. I don't really have to summon her, but I could give her individual commands. Well, I'm taking a lot of damage. Let me do some strangle dome. So I'm whipping my strangle dome. You have to aim directly on the base of it, in between the lines. If you aim right here, you could be missing out and you completely miss it. You would think that these two white lines and this dot represents, you know, the whole thing. No, it's that center dot right there represented. So the best way to hit it and to make sure that you're actually hitting your strangle dome is in between the grooves. That's the only way to make it stronger, in between. And of course, her weakness, Korra's weakness, is Xuma's enemies that have bubbles on them. This Warframe is not built for strength. That's why it's taking me a while for this guy to even take effect. I'm surprised he's not grabbed yet.
You have collected enough reactant to
Let's
open the
try.
relic.
Oh, I don't have any more energy. Alright, screw it. So Korra goes anywhere from, I would say, an A plus to about an, I wouldn't say she's S tier. I would say she's an A plus Warframe. She's only S tier when you give her a lot of power strength. As at basis, she's not very good without giving her power strength. So I would say she's an A plus Warframe. So those were her 4 abilities, A+. Very good Warframe. You give her power strength and then you give her special syndicate mod, which allows her in order to increase her critical chance. And it's Bob's your uncle. She's pretty badass. But I would say A+ is about the most I would give her. She's only really powerful when you give her power strength. Without it, she's not that great.
They fought well. Good dance, all.
And of course, you have the shit talkers and you know, in the chat. But they enjoy Warframe. Alright, so that was Korra. So the last of this should be on this video. Lavos. Not the greatest Warframe, but it's out of most of the Warframes I've ever played, I would say this is the one Warframe that has extremely unique abilities. And you would really, really, really need to know how to play this Warframe. I'm not even joking. Like, you have to know how to play him. Look at every one of his abilities. First abilities, you have to hold to imbued an enemy with toxic. Second abilities, you have to hold again to imbued with coal. Third abilities, you have to hold again to imbued with electricity. So you can't combine all of this within one power. I didn't know what the hell they were thinking, but they decided to separate all the hold buttons with regards to each one of these. I'm like, they're God. We're like, I don't have a button for each hold down. You're like, it makes no goddamn sense. So what they're telling you is that we're only going to allow you to do one whole ability, since your PlayStation controller doesn't have the power to do a whole, so you have to select one out of each that you want to use. So each one depends on the type of enemy you're going to be fighting. If you're going to be fighting infested, toxic. If you're going to be fighting infested and Grenier, toxic is the one you want to go for. Switch that out for the control that you need to hold down. If you're going to be fighting enemies that you want to slow down, switch that out for the button you want to control down. If you're going to be fighting Corpus, shield-based enemies, switch that out for the third. And if you're going to be fighting, once again, Corpus and other enemies, switch that out for the fourth abilities. So I'm going to show this in combat. So whichever is now on my options for my controllers, and that'll be the third ability, which is here. Ability C is in my up. That would be electricity. I would then have to find Corpus enemies and fight them, because it won't work that well against Grineer. The most it would do for Grineer is to stun them. So I'll pick a random enemy and prove how his ability works. Oh, before that, I have to describe what each of them are. So this is a very complicated Warframe. It's not just about holding down, it's about synergy. It says here, lash out, toxic, and strike consumes the target to heal Lavos. So it does two things. Toxic is on the enemy, it heals you in the process. But once this toxic status effect is on the enemy, you could also use your weapon, whichever effect that you have on your weapon. Let's say you have fire on your weapon. If you have fire on your weapon and you use toxic on this enemy with your powers, you now have a combination of both fire and toxic that are on this enemy now. And fire and toxic together gives you gas. Or let's say you have toxic on the enemy, but you have electricity on your gun. So if you apply toxic on the enemy, toxic is now on the enemy, draining his health. But if you have electricity on your gun, the enemy is now being affected by electricity as well, which now means you have applied corrosive to the enemy, which is the combination of both toxic and electricity. So this is a very strange Warframe. He works very strange. He works with your weapon and with your power. So he is the only one that has this ability. So you have to know what you're doing when you're using this Warframe. If you think you could just run in and start using like a gun that has coal on it, or electricity on it, or toxic on it, let's say your gun has corrosive on it, and you apply this first ability to an enemy. Well, your gun already have corrosive on it, so which has toxic and electricity. So all your gun would be doing, in combination to what's corrosive on this enemy, it would increase the multiplier of the toxic effect. Or in this case, it might not do that at all. Toxic might be separated simply because corrosive is its own thing. So enemy will have toxic on him while corrosive is also on him. Two different things. They won't boost each other because they're not in conjunction with each other. In order for toxic to be corrosive, it has to have another element to fuse with. If you already cast the fusion of your weapon, corrosive, then it has nothing to connect it to in order to turn into corrosive, if you understand what I'm saying. So yeah, very complicated Warframe. So in this situation, my gun has, well, it's not really complicated, but in this case, my gun has combination of radiation, 2 elements, and combination of viral, 2 elements, but heat is by itself. So if I want to apply more radiation, I would have to, third ability is on electricity and heat. Yeah, so yeah, what would happen is radiation of 1860 with this heat on, cast onto the enemy, and using the third ability, which is electricity, radiation will be happening on the enemy. So the gun's radiation will be affecting the enemy, and now radiation of powers will be affecting the enemy. So you have the radiation powers onto the enemy, and your gun's radiation onto the enemy, if you understand what I mean. So it's weird, man. It's like he's doing double work, and it's awesome at the same time, because you're getting double the amount of damage, and you could do all kinds of crazy shit. Like if your gun have radiation on it and you want to also cast like corrosive on an enemy. You could just fuse your gun to be certain things and then cast his powers, and then all of a sudden you're doing blast and corrosive and viral all at the same time. Like my gun here has 2 elemental types already on it. It has radiation and viral. So if I do this, I'm going to have a separate radiation with his powers in conjunction towards his heat. Or it might just boost the radiation I already have there. So he's kind of badass, man. He's very badass, but he's very complicated. Because when you're in combat, you're shooting all over the place trying to survive. You're not thinking about what's the proper combination of my weapons with my powers. I mean, like, you really have to be patient and thinking about what you're doing at the same time while you're in combat. If you switch to your pistoleros and all of a sudden you were like, oh shit, I didn't have any type of electricity on my pistoleros. Then all of a sudden your electricity, or I didn't have any type of heat on my pistoleros. Then all of a sudden your electricity of your third ability won't do anything. It will become a different type of elemental fusion. Like say if coal was on your pistoleros, then you now have electricity and coal in conjunction with each other, which will cast magnetism. And you don't want magnetism on because that's not what you were going for. So you really have to know what you're doing with this Warframe.
Let's go.
That's the second ability, cast onto him. The third ability is a sliding ability, which leaves a bunch of leaves on the ground. Or not leaves, like poison shards on the ground. In the form of toxic, because you chose toxic.
You have collected enough reactant to open your relic. The portal only allows travel in one direction. Start up the portal generators to reverse the polarity.
Move and strike.
I just turned it back on. Oh yes, you could turn it on and off. My third ability was on my up button. I turned it on and I turned it off. So I'm going to turn it off now. It's off now. Hold to turn on. Press it once or hold again to turn it off. Well, wait a minute. No. You don't hold it a second time to turn it off, but you do have to hold it to turn it on. Okay, so it's on. Third ability is on, which is electricity. On now. Electricity is on now. My power has turned on electricity, so now my weapon is doing more radiation damage. A combination of both radiation and heat. So, weapon already has radiation on it, but with electricity on and the heat of the gun, I've now added even more radiation to the weapon. Very strange Warframe. Typically most Warframe just cast powers on the enemy. This dude casts his stuff on his weapons. Of course he does have stuff that can cast on the enemy as well.
That was a close one.
Such as his third and his fourth.
There's the torsion beam device, but they've taken the void key. Find it.
Third ability. No, second. Third. Alright. That was second, that was third.
Big mistake, big mistake.
These are all toxic.
Quick, pick up the key.
you'll probably, I mean, if anyone watches this video, they'll probably say, well, why are they
You got the
toxic?
key. Now get
Because
back to
that
the
was only
portal.
the C ability. That's electricity. It has nothing to do with the other abilities. Each abilities is different type, as I said before. So when I use the seal ability for the up button and hold it down, you're only going to cast
The device is
electricity
set
like
on
this.
overdrive.
It's just on,
Get to
it's
the
on
portal
now.
before it melts down.
All the other abilities are their own types. A is a different type of element. A is corrosive. B is cold. C is electricity, as you see right here. And of course D is the heat. So they're not going to all turn electricity because I'm using the C button or the C powers. They're all going to be individual.
The Void Key and Torsion Beam device are out of commission. The enemy will not be returning anytime soon. Tenno, there are still undiscovered supply caches in the area. You may want to locate them before leaving.
That was the second ability on the Acolyte. That's why he was running slow. Second ability slows him down. Which is cold. Third ability does a slide. Oh no, second ability does the slide. I was wondering what the hell I'm talking about. Because I know the third ability is the one that turns into electricity, and I put that as the up button. So second ability does the slide. First ability does the toxic. Fourth ability does the heat. Yep, because I remember the third is the up button.
Or the Tenno.
Very complicated Warframe to understand. But once you get the hang of it, it's a smooth ride. Because you're buffing your weapons, you're slowing enemies down, you're doing damage multipliers, and you're also casting status effect on the enemy. You're doing 4 different things, but you have to know how to use this Warframe. I wouldn't suggest this Warframe for beginners. This is more like for people who are advanced. So I would say this is an A- Warframe simply because it's complicated. Once it stops becoming complicated to you and you're learning how to use him, then he goes anywhere from an A+ to an S tier. But I believe because he's a support and he's not really considered a DPS, he will always be like an A+. But at the moment, he goes anywhere from a B+ to about an A- because he's complicated. He's like someone within a relationship. It's complicated. You know, he's the complicated guy of the relationship. And complicated is never really a good thing. That's why he's anywhere from a B+ to A-. Alright, so that's the last of the Warframe. I think tomorrow I'm going to continue with the rest. If not tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. That would be Limbo, Mag, Loki, Mesa. So the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to see if I could squeeze in 12. Maybe I could squeeze them in right now. 2 more. No, I'm just going to wait for tomorrow. I got stuff I got to do. So that was 10 Warframes. First of which was Garuda, I believe. Yeah, it was Garuda, Gauss, Jair. I don't like her. She sucks. That's why I consider her anywhere from a C+ to a B. But if you know how to use her, she becomes good. So Garuda, Gauss, Jair, Harrow, Hildren, Hydroid, who used to be B+ to an A Warframe because they changed him. I would say he's more like a C+ to a B+ Warframe now. And Inaros, which used to be an S tier Warframe, but because they changed certain things, he's more like an A plus to an S minus Warframe. Which if as long as he's still treading that boundary between A plus and S tier, he's still good, very good. And of course Ivara, which is a kind of a beast if you know how to use her, which is anywhere from an S minus Warframe to a standard S. And of course Jade, which I would consider like an A minus Warframe or a general A Warframe. Wouldn't or maybe B plus to an A minus. Yeah, I would say she's a B plus to an A minus Warframe. I believe A minus is about the best you could give to her. She's falls in line in the B category. I would say she's a B level Warframe. And of course Korra, which you would think she would be an A plus S plus Warframe. I would say she's anywhere from an A plus to about S minus Warframe. If you know how to use power strength and how to use a strangle dome. Another Warframe you really have to know how to use, simply because she's complicated, just like Lavos. It's not meant for beginners. That's why she's in the A plus category. But if you're an expert, but if you're an expert player of Warframe, she becomes S tier. So coughing right now. I still have her in the A. Anywhere from an A minus to an A plus. I can't really see her as S plus. She's only S plus when she has her syndicate mods on and when you have a lot of power strength on her. As a standard basis, she's an A minus Warframe. Yeah, and Lavos is also very complicated. He goes anywhere from a B plus to a also in the same arena to about an A minus, A minus. So it's very hard for him to get into the S category because he basically starts from B going to A rather than from A going to S. So a very rare Warframes that goes directly from A to S, like Harrow goes directly from A to S, and Inaros I would say directly goes from A to S, or stays at A. And of course, Warframes like Gara goes directly from, like, say, A minus to about an S. So you really have to know how, like, all the greatest Warframes in Warframe, the most that you could give them as starter Warframes if you're starting up is the A minus treatment of all of them. And then you test them out and you will see if they're God level or not. But very few Warframes are in the D level unless three of their abilities suck. That's when they're in the D and F level, when three of their four abilities suck. And very rarely the three of four Warframe's abilities suck. It's only mostly two of their Warframe ability always sucks. But sometimes you do have Warframes that three out of their four abilities suck. Like I believe Yoreli, three out of her four abilities suck, but I believe they nerfed her and made her better. So now only two out of her four abilities suck. So she was like an F level, I got an F in school type Warframe or D in school type Warframe. Whereas I guess guys like Vauban, Trinity, Valkyria would be considered anywhere from B plus to A. Like Trinity would consider someone that's from B plus to an A Warframe. But if you know how to use her quite well, she goes from an A minus to an A plus and to an S minus if you really know how to use all four of her abilities. If you know how to use all of Trinity's four abilities very well to an expert level, she's S minus at best as one of the best support frames. So this Warframe can go anywhere from her starting of B plus to an A plus to an S minus. So there are Warframes that could be in the B and climb all the way to S once you get to know how to use them quite well. Like Baruch can go to S plus level starting from B plus simply because he's that awesome. And same as Excalibur. People say, well, he's the starter frame, he's the face of the franchise, he's the golden boy. He can't go to S plus. But if you know how to use him professionally, he can go to S minus, not S plus. So yeah, very very few Warframe can actually get into S level. In fact, I would go so much as to say that's not true. That's a lie. I believe the most you could take him to is an A plus, because I cannot see this guy for the life of me going past 3 hours in a survival mission. At best, he could go past 2. You know who's the goddamn freaking S plus? Mag. Squishier Warframes than most Warframes. And she was a starter Warframe from, I would say she would be considered a C plus Warframe, or a B minus Warframe, or a B level Warframe, and she just goes up. It's like she's all the way at the bottom here, or she's right in the middle here, and she goes from B minus or C plus to B plus to A plus to S plus. How the hell does that happen? Synergy of her powers. Synergy of her powers and her special mods. That's how that happens. If you know how to use certain warframes, they just are a god in missions. Mag is one of the few warframes that could go 3 hours in long survival against enemies that are beyond level 200. So yeah, you just have to know how to use it. So for now, this video is over. I will continue in the next one, either tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or when I get the chance to do so.